All right, there we go. Let's get our Facebook folks in here, then we can start the show. Got the spinning wheel going. Wheels 1 and 2. All right, welcome in. It is 6:45 where I'm at, probably 7:45 where a lot of you folks are. Either way, it's time for Broncos for Breakfast. I am Nick Kendall, joined by Scott Kennedy. Happy Wednesday to all you folks. Scott, are you rooting yourself down? What's going on? Tying down, setting up sandbags? I got a hurricane coming your way.
Yeah, it's going to be rough here the next couple days. So hopefully any trees that fall don't hit anything that I have to clean up.
Yeah.
Because what's coming, we usually lose a couple trees. I have to fish a tree off of my driveway or out of my pool every 2 years or so, and it's time.
Yeah. Well, hopefully you guys aren't hit too bad. I know that the Atlantic was pretty hot this spring and summer, so I hopefully not ramping up. Hopefully it can die down a little bit as it gets closer to landfall, but hope everyone down there is safe. And nobody in the Florida was safe this week, obviously. Dolphins, Jags, and Buccaneers lose, with the Broncos beating the Buccaneers handily. One of the biggest point differentials this week, and against the team with the largest underdog spread. So Broncos, are we back, Scott? What's going on? How are you feeling? I mean, we got a chance to talk Monday, but now it's kind of marinate a little bit. We saw the Monday night games as well. What are your thoughts, being not an outsider, but not having the emotional attachment? Where's this Broncos team going? Where are we at?
So my thoughts on it are, one, this was awfully encouraging. I was livid, and I said this on Monday, watching the game in person. I was livid watching Sean Payton the first two games, calling the game for his young quarterback and this offense. Like, okay, maybe we don't have the best weapons in the world, but you're still much better off spreading the field than you are trying to run right up the gut against the Steelers. I look in these bunch formations where the widest splits, the guys are basically, you're playing inside the hash marks against the Steelers. You're not going to stand a chance against the Pittsburgh Steelers that way. And you're not doing your quarterback any favors. For the love of God, get something downfield. Spread it out and let's get something downfield. Even if it doesn't work, even if it's incomplete, I don't care. And that's how they came out firing. And it made a difference, and it just set the tone for the team. Now, where do you go from here? I had somebody come into the comments saying, man, these guys are rough to listen to after a big win. I'm like, yeah, but the other part of this is we're not jumping off any bridges after a loss either. We're not the roller coaster podcast. We're going to stay pretty even keel. I said going into the season, Nick, trying to pick games, the Broncos are going to be underdogs in just about every game this year, just about every single one. So if you're going game by game, you're going to pick losses for a lot of them. So I like to try and pick them out in bunches. The odds of losing 4 in a row are just tiny. It's almost impossible. Now you're going to go to New York. They look pretty good. You're going to be a big underdog in this one too. So, how do you feel if you come out and you play well and you're 1-3, but you're just outmatched as a team with $90 million in dead cap and a rookie quarterback?
Yeah, I mean, have to keep saying that. That's a big part of the perspective. And a lot of guys on the defensive side, we're going to talk defense today. Obviously, the Broncos make a move this morning. But on the offensive side, I was thinking about it. Which guys on that unit right now are you getting a positive ROI on the offense? I mean, you could argue Josh Reynolds because he's getting paid nothing compared to the wide receiver market. And I'm talking draft picks as well. Obviously, Bidet. I don't know if we ever got the actual pronunciation, but he's one that you'd paid practice squad, right? Nothing for that. But Garrett Bowles, underperforming compared to what you're paying him. Powers, underperforming compared to what you're paying him. Quinn Miners, definitely underperforming compared to what you paid him. 5th round pick Wattenberg, I think that's about even. Unfortunately, he's been terrible. But 5th round pick, what are you going to do? Cortland Sutton, underperforming. Javonte Williams, underperforming compared to what you paid. Dulcich, underperforming compared to what you pay. Bo Nix, probably about even. It's too early. 12th pick. I mean, I'm not going to go too far down that one, but really just on the offensive side of the ball, good game this last one, but still overall probably not getting the ROI. And I just keep coming back to the offensive line. They're not the worst unit in football. Like some people, I don't know who said it. Somebody on Twitter I saw, I'm like, unless you're one of the fan bases with the top 5 offensive line, you think you have the worst offensive line in football. Denver does not have the worst offensive line in football, but you're not getting what you're paying right now.
Yeah, and again, part of it for me was the play calling. You know, when we came out of week 1, we did I sat in for you. I did the stock reports with Carl, and my first stock down was Sean Payton. I'm like, what? You're not giving your team a chance. I said, I'm watching a tennis match. I'm watching side to side to side to side. If I'm standing there watching from behind the end zone, watching an end zone view, all I'm seeing is passes, line of scrimmage or behind side to side. They never really had a chance. So I look at this. I'm like, all right, who is performing well on offense? Well, nobody had a chance, man. They didn't in those first 2 games. They didn't have a chance to perform well. Now they came out and did what you wanted to do, and you got a lead, and then you ramped off. You backed off a little bit. I'd like to see what happens in a closer game. Then I think we'll still get a better idea. For me, I kind of thought of this game like JJ McCarthy. Okay. We talked about why aren't the numbers better for JJ McCarthy? Because they're beating the hell out of teams and grinding them into the ground. Why weren't the numbers better for Bo Nix? Dude, you won 26-7. He did exactly what was asked of him. So that's kind of how I felt about this game. This team did exactly what was asked for them on offense. They got a lead, and then they put the boa constrictor on them in defense and just squeeze the life out of them.
Yeah, and it'll be curious to see how they do. I mean, we didn't even talk about it Monday, Scott, but arguably the Buccaneers defense were missing 3 of their top 6 defensive players. Definitely their number 1, number 2.
That didn't help them on offense, though, brother.
It didn't help them on offense, but Denver being able to have these crazy long drives and keep Tampa Bay offense cold and in the heat. I mean, they, especially that third quarter drive where they only got 3 points, but they just totally took the air out of the football. So it's going to be a tougher matchup this week. Denver, I felt like, didn't really respect Carlton Davis out there from the Buccaneers, but you got Reed and Sauce Gardner out there for the Jets. It's going to be a little bit of a different matchup up front. Now, granted, the Jets are not super. I don't want to use the word gimmicky. They don't use they pretty much, just like man up and our guys are going to beat your guys. When you have a lot of defense, you can do that. Robert Saleh, they play with good discipline, but it's not a lot of eye candy or anything like you had with the Seahawks. So hopefully with that, you're not going to have as much confusion with the rookie quarterback and with the offensive line as well. But this is a good Jets team right now. I think the spread is 7 points for the Jets. They're one of the few teams in the league right now, one of the 4 to 6 teams that have both positive. They're in the top half in EPA per play on offense and defense so far this season. So it'll be a tough game. But speaking of which, Scott, the defense here, Broncos, we have a signing today. Broncos sign longtime linebacker to the practice squad, Kwon Alexander. He's been around the league for a bit. I remember him with Tampa Bay being a pretty good player there. Not so good with the Steelers. And now, signed to the practice squad. I think it does speak to a position that Broncos, even entering preseason, we talked about it a lot. Like, they're not super happy with their linebacker room. You see them go out there. They have Barton in there being okay. You bring in Christian Welch. Now you're bringing in yet another linebacker. It's obviously a position outside of Alex Singleton they are not totally pleased with.
They probably shouldn't. You're probably hoping to get Jonas Griffith. We saw a flash of him, and this is one of the things about guys. We see this all the time. We saw it this weekend with somebody makes a splash entry into it, and then all of a sudden you're kind of expecting that. They set the bar so high. We saw that this weekend with Tillman. Okay, Tillman comes in and just has a huge game. Can we expect that every week? No, we cannot. I mean, he had 2 sacks in 20 snaps.
And one of them was a cleanup sack where 2 other guys.
And it wouldn't surprise me if he finished the season with 4 sacks. That's just how it is. So we see this with Jonas Griffith. He comes in, he has this big splash, and we just hoping to see it again and again and again. It just doesn't pan out. He's gone. Barton has been a disappointment so far, is what I would say. And you are looking to try and get better for sure. So is Kwon Alexander? He's low risk. And if I've got an injury in there, I can plug and play him in there, and it will be, I know what I'm getting. I'm going to get something, because you're one injury away from needing another linebacker. And even if you can't get the one you want right now, you've got a steady veteran that you can plug in if need be on Sundays.
Yeah, I'm honestly surprised that because he looked good in preseason. He's been a steady player for them, and I thought he's okay in coverage too. I'm surprised They haven't given Justin Strnad more run as well. Now, granted, we've said it on here 100 times, preseason football is not regular season football, but just with how much they are searching for that position, it seems like right now, they know better than we do, right? They're seeing the film room, they're seeing practice, not to be total appeal to authority, but they're just dealing with much more information than we have. But obviously, they're not super happy with Barton and Welch. And I think that's even to the point where you're seeing a lot of 5-1-5 fronts out there as well, trying to get more guys in the line of scrimmage. Granted, the Broncos have been blitzing like crazy. Part of that's probably lack of trust in linebacker. You'd rather have them press forward and occupy a gap rather than see them in space in coverage. And that's so far that's worked out for Denver. We'll see how that works against other quarterbacks. But overall, obviously the defense has been, Scott, I mean, obviously we try to prognosticate on here and project based on what we know. And I said all offseason, I'm like, this defense is dealing with a lot of areas of lacking talent and investment because you see them spending money and premium picks on the offense, the offensive line especially, but the defense, obviously you paid Jones, but you got rid of Simmons, you brought in John Myers. He's not super expensive. A lot of like B or C kind of tier contracts coming in here, but the defense has been phenomenal. I am shocked beyond belief how good this defense has been. And while the offense, I'll need to see it to believe it as far as the replicating what we had against Tampa Bay. The defense through 3 games looks real. And what game honestly looks really good the further we get away from it is that Seattle game. Geno Smith is playing unbelievable football right now. He's probably one of the top 5 quarterbacks in football through the first 5 or 3 weeks of the season. Long way to go. A lot can change there, but he is dealing out there. And also we're kind of seeing what how bad Shane Waldron was with the Seahawks as well. The fact that he looked that good in the past with Shane Waldron, who's now with Chicago, is a testament to Geno Smith. But the defense looks awesome. We'll kind of go through some of those guys as well. But linebacker, outside of Singleton, we're searching right now, unfortunately.
Yeah, and you're bringing somebody else in, Michael. Appreciate you coming in with the Facebook stars. Thank you for the support, my friend. And it just I get on. You'll hear me say it now a zillion times. Unfortunately, Scott, you're beating a dead horse. I know. I can't help it. But DK Metcalf was blanked in that game. Patrick Surtain has a 45. If I look at PFF's grades right now for cornerbacks, he's the 5th worst coverage grade in the NFL of 95 guys.
It's insane. And then he held Mike Evans to 1 catch or 2 catches.
They've put him on. They've matched him up one-on-one, shut down that guy. That's been your job. And it's been DK Metcalf, it's been George Pickens, and it's been Mike Evans. And what do they have? 75 yards maybe in 3 games total against him. 7 catches maybe.
To be fair,
that is getting it done.
Yeah, I agree. To be fair with you, the game 2 against Pickens, the penalties, those should count as catches because you're getting the yardage still, and he had 2 PIs, I think, down the field. So not his best game against George Pickens, even though the stats show George Pickens didn't go off. Those penalty yards matter. Obviously, those are big catches effectively. But yeah, the Broncos, to add to your point, Scott, it's not only impressive that he's played that well and not given up a lot of yardage, but they're doing it playing cover 1 and single high safety, which, I mean, the pick with Jones, it was a good cover 2 disguise that they flipped into there. It was great disguising, and it was a counterpunch compared to what they've been showing this season. But to be that effective, not giving up explosive plays when you're playing cover 1 in a league that is all about, the split safety looks right now to limit explosive plays is phenomenal. And right now, Denver is the number 2 team and tied for number 2 team in all of football and giving up explosive plays on defense, which is just shocking for me with how much cover 1 they're playing and everything like that. And 3 questions on the defensive back group coming into the season. They've only given up 2 explosive pass plays this season, which is a 20+ yard pass play, the lowest rate in the NFL. The Falcons have only given up 3. Denver's only given up 2. Now, you got a different test coming up here with Aaron Rodgers and Garrett Wilson, and again, small sample size overall. But that's pretty unbelievable to be that good at not giving up explosive plays when you're playing man coverage. I mean, it's just a phenomenal job, and it's not just Surtain; it's the other cornerbacks as well.
And sending a lot of pressure because again, you don't have. We've said it a zillion times. You don't have that Batman pass rusher. Well, that's okay. Vance is scheming up guys getting in from all kinds of directions. So it's like, well, you got 13 guys that have put a hit on the quarterback. That's scheme, dude. I mean, that's not okay. I'm gonna swap out a new edge rusher every time, and I just have 13 badasses out there that are whipping the offensive tackle. That's Vance Joseph being aggressive, which again, live by the sword, die by the sword. So we'll see how that extends, especially against a guy like Aaron Rodgers, who can hurt you in a lot of ways. Coach Chris, not hurting us, coming in. Good to see you. You're back. He says, just returned from Thailand. Welcome back, my friend. I hope you had a blast. I'm glad to see the team get their first win. Huge moral boost for Nix. This week will be a challenge for sure. It's good to be back. And dare I say it, missed you guys. Missed you too. Hashtag Denver Broncos for life. Thank you, Chris. Welcome back.
Yeah, great to see you, Chris. I don't know if we said hello to Michael. I think he was on the screen, but good morning to you, Michael. It says, good morning, Nick and Scott on Broncos for breakfast. Go Bo Broncos. Absolutely. Good to see you, Michael. Hope you're doing well out there. We got Troy coming in too. It was really good to see Troy and his little guy out there at the meet and greet this season. So always good to see you, Troy. And sorry we didn't talk more. Obviously, I had my own little guy there with things to deal with, but he says, hey, guys, sorry I was behind on the feed yesterday when commenting. Do you think staying in West Virginia this week will be a positive bonding like many former players say? I mean, everybody's different, right? You might have some bonding. You might have some people who don't love each other, too, and kind of the close space is not great. But I think overall, especially coming off that Tampa Bay win, I think they can kind of dig into that us against the world. They're staying in, oh, gosh, like this really exclusive old money resort in West Virginia that like a bunch of the presidents have stayed at in the past and whatnot. And it's a big mountain town. There's not a lot around the area either, but they're going to have a good time, I'd imagine. I hope it's very football focused, but this does seem like a tight team that, we have the couple years ago, Nathaniel Hackett, Brett Rippon and Dalton Reisner going out on the sideline. I don't foresee that happening with this team. Now, granted, in a game, emotions can be high. I've definitely had moments with some of my friends where we've gotten a little bit, shovey pushy, maybe alcohol was involved. I don't know. But then, it's all good. But it does seem like a positive moment, especially coming off a win. If they'd have been 0-3 and gotten the brakes beat off them in Tampa Bay, and now you're going to the Jets, it'd be like, God, is this a prison? I want to get out of here. I kind of miss my family. But now you're coming off a win, really good. I'm happy to have that for this team. So excited about that.
Appreciate you, Troy. And Lawrence coming in. He says, dang, Scott's getting old. Well, I'm not getting younger, that's for sure. We all are, but what's up, guys? I haven't seen you in a bit. Moment of Truth week, was it a fluke or is Bo that good? And when you say like that good, he saw him thrown for a touchdown.
Yeah.
I mean, that good is, if this was a normal time, you'd be kind of disappointed, right? I mean, he's been good for a rookie. He had a good game. He did what was asked of him. He managed the game very, very well and used his legs very well. But again, I think we're losing a little bit of perspective on some of these things. Yeah, we've seen signs that he can run an offense and do all this, but is he your long-term answer? We don't know that yet. We've seen signs that he can be, and the returns are good. But is Bo that good? Well, that's a relative statement. How good? Is he going to the Pro Bowl as a rookie with no touchdowns in his first 3 games? Probably not.
Yeah. I mean, we saw glimpses this last week of exactly what we wanted. Now, granted, Jeremy gave me a hard time on Twitter immediately following the game because I said Bo had a solid game. If we're grading on a curve for a rookie, he had a great game. But overall NFL comparison, it was a solid game. He did a good job of avoiding sacks. We saw the athleticism. That's something I've continually said on here as a prospect. I think it's maybe that Oregon offense. I didn't watch enough of the Auburn highlights, I guess, but I'm really surprised how good the athleticism has been. And I'm happy to see Sean Payton start to utilize that as part of the run game design. If you're running, like you mentioned, Scott, running your head against the wall and they're stacking the box, if you have an athlete like that, at least make them account for them. We have the zone read. You're occupying an edge rusher. You're getting an extra gap there. It's as good as blocking them if you're occupying them with that zone read look there. Then you can do a lot of stuff off of that as well. So happy to see that. But still, there was a few times Bo Nix held on to the ball a little long rather than hitting the backdrop and firing the ball. There was one throw where the ball was spotted on the left hash mark and he tried to throw it to the right side of the field. And you just kind of saw the fine arm talent, but not elite arm talent where the guy can close on it still. And a few throws that were in harm's way. I don't know exactly what, and PFF, you guys are right. I think, Scott, they have different people grade every game and every team this
Oh,
year.
there's no doubt about that. Yeah, there's no doubt about that. And some of the personnel, it's like I'd love to get a look at their back end. Whoa, man, it's too early for
Me
that.
too. Me
To
no,
see what's going on the behind the curtain, so to speak,
Yeah.
maybe a better way of putting that. Because there had to have been some huge personnel, like a lot of turnover since last season. Because the stuff that I've watched with the Broncos games and the Falcons games, which is who I look at and grade, even with the Colts games when I was covering the Colts the last couple of years, it's been pretty good. Is it always right? No, but can I use it as a guide? Can I feel good referencing it, saying, yeah, Pat Surtain was good. He had a PFF grade of this. I can't do that this year. I cannot do that this year with the two teams that I've been watching the most, which is the Broncos and Falcons, because they've been so bad. They've been so bad. Again, I watch the Saints. I look at the Saints. I'm like, okay, these are solid. Whoever's doing the Saints games knows what they're doing.
Yeah. I do wonder for the Broncos specifically, because they're playing such a different style of defense than other teams right now, if the grader is having a hard time with the assignments. Now, granted, it seems pretty simple. It's cover one, it's man, right? But like with that, you're going to have a lot more penetration up front. It's more of a penetrating front versus a sit your butt down and anchor type of defensive line. So Zach Allen getting upfield and an offensive lineman kind of, following him upfield, that's not exactly a loss for Zach Allen. Now, even if he's not great, I don't think he's the single worst defensive tackle and run defense in football. You're seeing the similarly with John Franklin Myers, who, again, not a anchor kind of guy, but that's not that's not what they're asking their defensive tackles to do. This isn't a react defensive lineman. This is a pursuit, attacking, gap penetrating defensive front right now with how much they're blitzing. So same thing with Patrick Surtain. Like, they're not throwing at him very much, and they're grading the throws at him, but it's cover one. It's a harder assignment when you're not playing off coverage and you don't have two safeties behind you, right? It's a hard assignment. So I just wonder how much.
It's like saying, oh, Greg Maddox didn't do very good pitching a shutout on 78 pitches because he didn't throw the ball harder than 90. Yeah. Anything below 90 is an X. It's a miss. I'm like, you can't be much more effective in the first 3 games with the assignments he's had than Pat Surtain has been. Bottom line. I'm like, there's opinions, and this is subjective, and there's facts. Well, you're subjectively wrong. This might be an opinion-based subjective thing, but dude, you're wrong. You're wrong on this. Kind of like I say, taught my kids at a very young age. I'm like, it's subjective, but what's the greatest rock and roll band of all time? Led Zeppelin. That's the answer. They're not my favorite band. And I think Nick kicked out his microphone again, or his camera again.
My camera keeps doing a weird thing. Give me 1 second here. I'm here
today, and then it's kind of fun when his avatar just starts bouncing when he's talking. But he's disappeared on me more than once so far. So I'm going to talk to Troy instead of Nick. Troy's back in here. He says, sample size points, all good ones, but it sucks that you can get excited only after the sample size, which is when the time to be excited is over. Sample size is the enemy of the fanatic. It is, and that's kind of what someone was saying when they came in. They're like, man, these guys are tough to listen to after a big win. I'm like, yeah, I'm not the kind of guy that starts my day with everything is awesome from the Lego movie. Maybe I should. But again, we're not the ones that are jumping off the cliff after 2 games. Now, I will question things that look big and bad to me on a big scale. Sean Payton's play calling was a concern. Bo Nix not looking great, not so much. I'm not too worried about a rookie quarterback in the first 2 games of the season. Not even the first 3. I'm not making any big sweeping conclusions one way or the other at this point. So that's kind of the way we see it. We'll call it like we see it. Doesn't mean we're telling it like it is.
Yeah, I mean, I did that show following the Steelers game solo that Monday morning and said, like, right now this looks like a team that is going to pick the efforts they put on the field the 2 weeks, especially the offense, looks like a team that'll end up with a top 5 pick. But this is not who they're going to be the entire season, right? It's a testament to a young team and a good coaching staff that you can evolve. The story is not written yet. And the other factor is we just don't know the reality of how good Seattle and Pittsburgh is going to be. Right now, that's the number 1 and number 2 defense in EPA per play in all of football. Now, there is some confounding in that sample as well, because Denver was so bad offensively against them, and that's 1/3 of your sample size. That makes a big big chunk of why they're the top two defenses. But Denver looks like they found something this last week, especially starting early. So can that be replicated again? I mean, we even saw last year, Scott, the worst team in football, Carolina Panthers. They went into Houston week 2, I think, and beat CJ Stroud and that Texans team pretty good. I mean, things can happen in one game in the NFL. What separates just a regular NFL team from a good NFL team consistently putting up those games? Can Denver do that again? Remains to be seen. We will see. The sample size is small, but you have to feel good coming off that Tampa Bay game that you at least have the potential to put together a game like that in all 3 phases.
At the end of the season, the standings don't lie, and that's week to week. It happens. No team is up. Like I've said a bunch, Kansas City was 11-6 last year. They won the Super Bowl. Best team in football was 11-6 in the regular season. There's too much parity to go undefeated. It's not quite baseball level of parity, but it's close. Where the worst teams are 7-9 versus 9-7. That's parity.
Yeah, unless you have one of the top 3 to 5 quarterbacks every year, there's going to be a lot of fluctuation. Now, those teams that have those guys, unfortunately, they're going to have a ticket to the dance every year. But the other teams,
you're still looking at 12-5. There's going to be every so often there'll be the aberration of a 15-2 out there. But nobody's gone undefeated in my lifetime. And as Lawrence pointed out early, I'm old. Ralph, good to see you. Ralph Bracegirdle, appreciate the stars, my friend. Feels like a newer name coming in. He says, that rookie wearing number 92 really reminded me of Elvis Doomerville, one of the best to have ever done it, Nick.
Yeah, I mean, it's the short build. I don't think he is as explosive as Doomerville was, who was unbelievable. Also, Doomerville had tree trunks for arms. I think he had crazy weird proportions for his body type. He was 6'6'1", but had 35-inch arm length. So pretty interesting here. Randy Peel comes in and says Tillman is not a rookie. I don't know what his designation is because he was playing in the USF or whatever it was, XFL. He had a good game, a lot of feistiness, and he's a guy that just kind of knows how to rush the passer. I don't know if he's got the overall tools to I don't think we're going to confuse him for Doomerville, but the short stature and everything for fun. I also saw a comment in here from Hugh Jelly fan, people asking about the Dolphins trading for Zach Wilson. I think that would be interesting. The issue with Zach Wilson is that I think Schefter maybe called for it too, but what Mike McDaniel wants to do is have that drop back pass game, a lot of screens, a lot of quick stuff on time. That is not Zach Wilson. I just don't know what that offense looks like with Zach Wilson. Now, he's got a big arm. He can do some things outside the pocket. I'm happy to have him here in Denver for what it is. And if they're offering a 5th-round pick after you gave up a 7th, see you, Zach. I mean, only 1 year of control left. I mean, God bless you. I'll take the 5th and a chance to move around and extra capital there. But if I'm the Dolphins, I'm looking at in Florida still. I'm being like, hey, how much for Mac Jones? One of the better screen throwers. I think he just makes a lot more sense as far as the what's it called? Metronomic type of offense that you see out there in Miami.
What we've seen in NFL games from Zach Wilson is the worst of Russell Wilson. He's not a schedule player. He's not a system guy. He is a chaos merchant when he's playing his best. I've said what used to scare me the most about Zach Wilson was the more time he had, the worse he was. I can't think of another quarterback that's ever been any good in this league that I could say that about. Now, blame that on the Jets. Some people will. But again, what are you going to get for him anyway? If you get a 5th, he's probably gone. He is probably gone now. And the Jets are playing better now, but it's Aaron Rodgers is Aaron Rodgers. This is Aaron Rodgers, not necessarily Nathaniel Hackett, the New York Jets.
Yeah, without a doubt. So now kind of talking about the Jets a little bit, this has been a team that has been kind of, obviously they had a big win last week. They unfortunately have an extra 3 days to prepare for Denver because they played Thursday night last week. And something that's emerging with this team, and I think they're really going to try to test Denver here, their running game looks like they have 2 pretty good backs. Obviously, they have Breece Hall, who was a early 2nd-round pick. He's had an injury, but he's mean, Denver should know he's beaten the absolute crap out of Denver the last 2 years. He's had like 2 50-plus yard rushing touchdowns, I believe. But also, they have a rookie running back, a guy who was a lot of hype and then fell in the draft a little bit because I don't want to say a one-trick pony, but it had some questions about just how overall versatile he is. But Braylon Allen from Wisconsin, massive running back, kind of a north-south runner. But if he hits a hole, yeah, he can be punishing and get in the open field, and it's like trying to tackle a horse.
He had a clapback on Twix the other day. Someone said, like, how does this guy fall to the 4th round? And he basically blamed the combine, which is kind of funny. I think he, like, word for word said they wanted to see me run around in my underwear.
Yeah.
Good for him. That's kind of funny because they've got some weapons, and Aaron Rodgers will use the short passing game as an extension of the running game probably better than any quarterback in the NFL, where he will, if you back off on the wide receiver, he will step back 1 step and just whip it over to Lazard, to Wilson, to one of those guys, and let them pick up 5 or 6 yards just on the side. And then that spreads the defense out. It makes it really hard to start blitzing guys when you've got the running game going like that. It's a tough matchup. Aaron Rodgers is Aaron Rodgers for a reason. And he looks mobile too. We've talked about Achilles injuries. It's been a big topic with Kirk Cousins, with Aaron Rodgers. I have not seen Kirk Cousins scramble for any positive yards. I've seen very, very mobile Aaron Rodgers. So their injuries might have been a little bit different, but there was questions about Aaron Rodgers coming back last year, at the very end of last year. He's at 8 months. He is bootlegging, waggling, and he is still capable of picking up 15 yards if you lose containment on him.
He looks good. We'll see what happens here. Now, granted, Scott, the Jets' combined strength of schedule through their first 3 games is like the exact opposite of Denver. They have played an absolute cupcake overall. Now, they did play the 49ers week 1, which the 49ers are 1-2 right now. Their only win being against the Jets. Maybe without Christian McCaffrey, maybe it's kind of, pop goes the weasel there a little bit. But then they beat the Titans, who are dreadful.
We're considered the worst team in football right now.
That or the Jags. And then they beat the Patriots, who they beat the brakes off the Patriots. But the Patriots,
you feared for the quarterback's safety.
Yeah,
in that game a little bit. I mean, it's a tough position to play. Real quick, Nick, I'm going to interrupt you. Apologies, because I'll forget if I don't. What do I get fired up about these days? Like, hey, Scott, congratulations, your team won. I'm like, dude, I don't care. If it's not Chelsea, they won or lost, then I care about Chelsea. That's what I care about. I get fired up about people with billions of dollars doing stupid stuff and wasting it. I'm like, call me up. I'll take a 1,000th of it and save you millions and millions and millions of dollars. Tennessee Titans giving $50 million to Lloyd Cushenberry is a mistake. Giving $100 million to Calvin Ridley is a bigger mistake. Anybody spending money that dumb deserves to be 0-3. Okay, I'm done. Go ahead.
My main point coming about that Jets Patriots game is this is going to be a game where the Broncos offensive line has to step up. If they want any chance in hell, they're going to need to be able to run the ball, not great, but just effectively, and keep Nix up right now. Nix, the translation of his ability to avoid sacks has translated pretty well so far. He is one of the least sacked quarterbacks so far through 3 games, so that's great. But this is another one of the top 10 defensive fronts in football. Will McDonald has been awesome. Quinnen Williams is probably one of the top 5 interior defensive linemen, and they are able to really pick matchups up front. So this is another game. It's how many times can we say it falls in the trenches, but specifically Broncos offensive line versus the Jets defensive line. I think that is the main factor for this game. If Denver's going to win, they at least need a stalemate there. And I think that's a hard ask, especially, we're talking to 7-point dogs here, but offensive line, time to step up. You're paid like one of the top units in football. I know that Alex Palshetsky, a lot of people are excited about that. I thought the results were better than what the tape showed to me, Scott. I thought a lot of his blocks looked like a guard blocking as a tackle, kind of in his chest a little bit, which was fine against was fine against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers edge rushers. Not sure how it's going to handle the Jets in this game, but offensive line needs to step up.
I'll tell you, the guy who flashed at me was Javon Kinlaw against the Patriots. I'm like, oh my God. I saw him just this hugely athletic play, 54. I'm like, who is that? It was Javon Kinlaw out there. So just another one of those guys to keep an eye on. And Jason says, Aaron Torres Achilles 2 months before Kirk. 2 months is a huge difference. It is. But he was also at practice at the end of last year. There's also 2 different injuries with an Achilles. You can have a tear, which isn't nearly as bad as a rupture. With a rupture, it's almost like they say the Achilles ends up turning into, if you look at a mop head, and you have to take all of those pieces and all of those strings with a rupture and put them back together. And that takes a lot longer to recover from. So I don't know the case with both of those guys, but their injury could have been a little bit different. It's not just like, oh, it's a high ankle sprain. No, there's definitely different degrees of a tear on an Achilles versus a rupture of an Achilles. So it could have been that as well. I don't know for sure, but what I do know is Aaron Rodgers looks mobile again. That much I do know.
Yeah, he did look mobile. We'll see that be a test though. The Jets, they're gonna have to toss in their rookie in this game as well. They're starting right tackle Morgan Moses suffered an MCL sprain and should be out this game. So Olu Fashanu, who had a pretty good preseason, although moving from left tackle to right tackle is never a guarantee it's going to work out for them. I haven't seen if that's who they're planning to start there, but they do have an injury on the side of the offensive line. And with how Denver has been able to get pressure up front, Cooper's been playing the best ball of his career. Benito looks super explosive and has been a little bit better against the run this season. Ellis is improving. How much they blitz communication out there as well. It should be a fascinating matchup, but missing Moses is going to be definitely hurt for them. That's what happens, I guess, when you have 2 old tackles. There's a chance that can happen. Troy coming in here. We're going to find out about Wattenberg this week. Wattenberg deserves the same grace and leeway, I think. Not exactly because he wasn't a first-round pick, but center is a hard position to – it's one of the slower developmental positions typically, Scott. Kind of saw it with Cushenberry, right? The last year of his rookie contract. It's like, okay, now we're finally competent. Denver's 2 starting centers before that, they spent their entire rookie season on the practice squad before even getting out there. But Wattenberg, yeah, he's been one of the worst centers in football. I mean, you're kind of getting what you're paying there on that front. I think you're probably never going to get beyond bottom 10 center play this season, and that's going to be hurtful with a rookie quarterback and a team that can't run the football. Maybe it's a position we're looking to change this offseason now that some money should be coming down the tracks, freeing up a bit. But Wattenberg's definitely going to have a tough task this week against the Jets, who have Williams, Solomon Thomas still out there as well, Javon Kinlaw. It's a talented Leonard Taylor. I mean, it's a talented defensive front.
Yeah, we talk about investment all the time and expectations. I mean, what are your expectations of your center group based on the investment that you've put into it?
A 5th-round pick and a 7th-round pick, you possibly go into the season with the worst center in football.
That's just the way it is. Now, can those guys, well, what about Scott? Yes, I know all the what abouts. I know you got to get lucky, but your investment into the center position, you're getting what you paid for right now. Mm-hmm. And a lot of that has to do with, I've traded up a few times. I've given up some picks, Nick. Not only with the trade where you gave up a bunch of picks, but in the last couple of drafts, you've given up picks voluntarily to try and move up in the draft. And I consider a 2nd and 3rd round pick for the center position, I consider that a premium pick. Yeah. For non-premium positions, if you use a 2nd or 3rd round pick, that's day 2, right? That's just day 2, a 2nd and 3rd. If you use a day 2 pick on an interior lineman, you have high expectations for that player. I don't have high expectations for any day 3 pick. None of them.
Yeah.
Except maybe
the first 10 in the 4th round, like the very beginning of day 3, but that's
maybe, but you know what I'm saying, not 5th. So you're Detroit Broncos fans, you're kind of getting what you're paid for, and you don't have the money to spend, the resources to spend for everything. You don't. So
especially with the dead cap.
Yeah. And that's what I mean. Resources. Yeah. It's you can say capital for all of that. I like the term resources better. Your resources with money and your resources with draft picks.
Yeah. Without a doubt. It's an area that, we'll find out this season, but it's also kind of testing the theory of offensive line is only ever as good as the weakest guy on the unit, and Wattenberg's been kind of tanking the unit a little bit this season. Now, it's not all on him, I think, but there is like a negative amplifying effect going on right now. You see that with offensive line. You can see that with secondary as well, where teams can target the weakest player. And Wattenberg has been struggling, but he deserves a little bit of grace and time, I think, as well, given, this first time starting at center and kind of, again, low cost in that one. And that was always going to have to be some areas of the roster coming into this year, given what you mentioned, the resources, dead cap, lack of top picks. So we'll see what happens here. Broncos, Jets, Scott. We got to wrap it on up here. I hear baby's up now. Doesn't sound too upset, so that's good. But you have a prediction, a score prediction. I'm not going to hold you to it for the final thing with Chad, obviously, because it's just Wednesday. But do you have one off the cuff here?
I think it's going to be fairly low scoring. What were we, 7.5 on this one? I'll pick the Jets. 24-13, somewhere in that neighborhood. 27-13. I like the Jets in this one.
And I'm going to go.
Like I said, if we go score by score by score, the Broncos are going to be underdogs in most of theirs. So as Alex says, hey guys, late to the show, but curious what you guys think our record will be going into Baltimore Week 9. Game by game, there's not a lot of games I'm going to pick the Denver Broncos in. But over the course of the season, I think we came out with 6-11. So my answer to this question, I just looked it up, with 8 games, what do you think the record's going to be going into Baltimore Week 9? 3-5. So where do they get those other 2 victories? Maybe Carolina, and then you maybe split with the Chargers and the Raiders. Maybe sneak one out in New York. I don't know. But this one looks tough. But to be, like you said, as good as New York's looked, their schedule has not been anything near what the Denver Broncos have played. Play like they did against Tampa, and you can win this game without a doubt.
Yeah, which Broncos team shows up? Can they get off to a fast start as well? Can they stop the running game? That's a big one. They're going to try to run the football, I think, even with Rodgers still to protect him, especially with how Denver has been rushing the quarterback. So I'm going to go with the Jets as well in this one off the cuff here. And I'm hoping for Denver, but I need to see it multiple times before I believe it. And I will go with the Jets winning 20-10, specifically the Broncos offense. Until the offensive line shows they can be more consistent and the run game can take the pressure off of Bo Nix in 3rd and long situations. That's some point I wanted to talk about earlier, Scott, is like Sean Payton frustrating watching him, crash the car into the wall over and over again. But like
why can't we run the ball? Where are they supposed to run?
Yeah.
You're looking at 9-man fronts, dude.
And that's one reason you want to throw it. But against this cornerback group, I don't know. We'll see how that goes. There's been some turnover-worthy throws. It's not like Bo Nix hasn't been trying to push the ball. I think he's top 10 in pass attempts over 10-plus air yards. But the issue is way too many of them have been in harm's way, specifically in the first 2 weeks. So we'll see how that changes this week as the sample continues to become more robust. But I'm going to go Jets 20-10 in this one. I just don't trust the Broncos' offensive line and the run game to keep them from 3rd and longs, and 3rd and longs have been problematic for Denver. So we'll see what happens here. Don't hold me to that score prediction for the final write-up for Chad and Mile High Huddle, but that's where I'm at right now.
I'm just interested to see, do teams start adjusting? Again, I mentioned earlier the high risk, high reward, live by the sword, die by the sword defense of the Denver Broncos. There have been a lot of blitzes. It feels like, I don't know what the analytics are, but my seat of the pants analytics says you're bringing a lot of guys.
Denver blitz rate is insane. I just want to I wish I had the stat for you here, Scott. I don't think any other team in the NFL is over 30% pass attempts being blitzes. And I think Denver's like at 48. So like they are like, it's a crazy outlier for how much they're blitzing.
And teams will adjust over the course of 17 games. So we'll see. We'll see. I would much rather see pressure and burned on a big play than sit back in a 4-man rush and watch that quarterback pick a team apart. It just drives me nuts.
Yeah.
You'll prevent defense.
Denver's not doing that this season. They're trusting their cornerbacks, and you can't do that without Jaquan McMillan and Riley Moss playing unbelievable football. I mean, Riley Moss has been probably the biggest shock for me this entire season. We talk about like all these guys, can you roll a Yahtzee over and over and over again? Haven't rolled a Yahtzee at Wattenberg. You haven't rolled a Yahtzee for the running back position. You haven't done so. Dulcich for
Also,
sure.
the tight end room
Not
has been, snake eyes.
Marvin Mims. I mean, there's a lot of spots specifically in the offense. You look like you rolled a bleeping Yahtzee with Riley Moss right now, who looks awesome. And Scott, I know we got to get out of here, but I do have the graphic here. Shout out to Zach Seegers for putting this out here. Let me pull it up here real quick just to show you how wild the difference is between the blitz rate and everybody else. So Denver, unfortunately, not getting a lot of pressure still, despite blitzing a lot. But the x-axis here, the one on the bottom, is your defensive blitz percentage. The Vikings and the Panthers look like they're at about 38%. And then you have Denver at 48%. Just an unbelievable outlier here this season with the blitz rate. You can't do that unless you have unbelievable corner play. But when you're that far that way, you're right, Scott. Is there a shoe about to drop? That's kind of what we're watching for there. But
It's
that's
high
crazy.
risk, high reward, and it's been fun. It has. The defense has been fun to watch. And what else has been good? And then I'll go. Riley Dixon has been good.
Mm-hmm.
Pinning guys inside. He's as good at been doing as well as anybody you've seen of pinning teams inside the 10.
Yep.
He's got that backspin sand wedge down.
Yeah. He had one bad punt in the Steelers game, but after that, I think it was the first one, not great. But after that, it's been great. The issue has been more so penalties from the coverage unit. But yeah, he's been very good, and they've been complimentary football. Lutz, perfect on the season as well. I mean, special teams, shout out to Mike Westhoff and everybody. They've been doing good. Shout out to Michael Ronquillo. Says, great show, Nick and Scott and Broncos for breakfast. Go Bo Broncos. Awesome. Great to see you, Michael. Appreciate you coming in. Make sure you guys are following Scott and I on Twitter. Scott is at Scout Kennedy. I'm at Nick Kendall, MHH. Also, make sure you're following us at Mile High Huddle. If you haven't done so yet, we're at facebook.com/Mile High Huddle and facebook.com/Mile High Huddle pod. Make sure you're following us there. Subscribe, like, and share over on YouTube as that ticker shows as well. Shout out to all our star givers today. Michael Ronquillo, Coach Chris back from Vietnam. Hope you had a good time. Troy Boer a few times. Lawrence Rivera a few times. Ralph Brace Girdle coming in as well, talking about Doomerville. Thank you guys so much. Scott, any final thoughts before we say goodbye until next Monday?
White Shadow. Turbo call out there. There's only a few things I know in the world, Colin, and now I don't even know the kids' movies nearly as much, but that was Turbo. White Shadow. No, it's definitely a lot more fun coming off a win like this and showing that the team is going to stand up and fight, which we talked about last year. I think it was the Chiefs game. You came back and you're like, okay, this team has not quit. Mm-hmm. That's encouraging when you're not playing very well. And they went on a 6-1-1 run. So does this team have that in them? We'll see. But I expect this team to come out and fight. And then the matchups with the overly aggressive defense is fascinating to me. And then I am an Aaron Rodgers fan. The way the man plays football, he's just good. So I'm looking forward to that matchup this weekend.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I can't imagine Denver changing too much. They're going to put their trust in their defensive backs to get it done. And arguably two of the three best corners in football going head-to-head in this matchup as well, despite what PFF is ranking them. The other guy being
a crap rating too.
Nice, whatever.
I mean, it's Sauce has always gotten really great grades, but player grades, I go by position and I go to corner, I have to change it to 100 because I don't think either one of them are in the top 50. If I go to Sauce is 57.
Whatever.
Yeah, he's got a 57 overall, and where he's getting hurt is the run defense. He's great on the pass rush, so look out from the blitz, but he's got a 64 coverage grade. Again, they've had some turnover there at PFF because it's the product so far in the first few weeks has been pretty poor.
Yeah. Yep. Weak sauce. Yeah. The other guy being Trent McDuffie, in my opinion. But thanks to you guys. We will see you again next week. Continue to choose kindness and compassion. And as always, go Broncos.